All right, this is the part two of the section 6.1, which was talking about the pathing or pathways that harvest and store chemical energy. Where we left off, we're going to do a little bit of review, okay? Talking about oxidation and reduction reactions and how NADH plays a role in this process, okay? We have A here, okay? And now A has a hydrogen, which means it has high energy. And now what's going to happen is when that substance gets oxidized, it's losing its H, right? So it's losing the electrons. Where are the electrons going? It's going to be added to this NAD plus to form NADH. So now, as you can see, my H that I have here is now nice and ugly right there. Okay, so now I have this NADH molecule that is now ready to be oxidized, okay, and in doing so, it's going to reduce another substance. For example, when this NADH is oxidized, it's going to oxidize or be the reducing agent for B right here, and B becomes reduced. Therefore, B ends up having this high energy electron or high energy hydrogen, and the NAD is now put back into the cycle to pick up another H somewhere along the way. Okay? Okay, so oxidative phosphorylation is coupled with the oxidation of NADH. So when we're looking at this, the NADH that becomes oxidized because it's losing the electrons, it's going to release energy. That energy is then going to go into the process of phosphorylating the ADP and adding this P to form ATP. Okay, so the oxidation of the NADH is what's going to provide the energy to add that third phosphate group back onto ATP. Okay, where are we at? Okay. Now, the actual process that is going to reform that or attach that third phosphate is a process called chemosmosis. So here's the basic definition of what chemosmosis is: the diffusion of protons across a membrane, which drives the synthesis of ATP. So chemosmosis converts the potential energy of a proton gradient across a membrane and into the chemical energy of ATP. Okay, and we'll take a look at this diagram right here. Okay, and as we can see, the NADH that comes over here, and this is, in this case, the last stage of cellular respiration, the electron transport chain, but a simplification of it. Okay, the NADH is going to lose the electrons, and in doing so, losing those electrons, it's going to lose energy. So the NADH becomes NAD plus. I don't know where that blue came from, and it's going to energize this protein, and in doing so, it's going to pump this hydrogen across the membrane. Now, thinking, well, why does it take energy to do that? Well, if you look at the concentration gradient, we're actually traveling against the concentration gradient. So this is a type of active transport, and the high energy electrons of NADH is providing the energy to push those protons across. Okay. Well, as the proton gradient gets greater and greater and greater, there's going to be a want for those electrons, or not electrons, but a want for those protons to come back to the lower concentration side. So we have this enzyme right here called ATP synthase. It's an enzyme, okay? And what it's going to do is it's going to have a little spot right here, for ADP and the inorganic phosphate. And as the protons are passing down through, it's going to convert some of that kinetic energy, because these protons are going to cause a spinning, so to speak, of this enzyme. And the conformational change of the enzyme is going to push this and this together to form that. And it's going to form that third phosphate bond. Okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at what ATP synthase looks in a little more detail. So here we are. Okay, so don't worry too much about the whole, the F naught unit and the F1 unit. Just know that as these protons are being pumped across, Okay, it's going to be allowing the conformational change of the enzyme, and it's going to push these two guys together, and it's going to form the ATP. Okay, a vast majority of the ATP that is being synthesized in our bodies and in our cells is the use of chemosmosis. Okay, here's a little overview of what cellular respiration and photosynthesis are and how they relate to each other. Okay, important to note, cellular respiration is catabolic, okay, and it is resulting when glucose is oxidized. So the oxidation of glucose is going to be a catabolic process. Also, if you notice, chemical energy is going to be released during the catabolic process. Okay, so this would be exergonic. Okay, photosynthesis, we'll go green, why not? Photosynthesis is an anabolic pathway, and it's endergonic because energy is needing to go into the reaction. Okay, so here's how they all come together. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start over here with the light. So light comes in, it's going to provide energy to reduce, okay, certain coenzymes, okay, and it's also going to produce some ATP. And that process is then going to lead to photosynthesis. And in photosynthesis, we're going to have the production of carbohydrates. So we're going to reduce the carbon dioxide that's coming into photosynthesis, and we're going to form carbohydrate, or glucose. Okay? The carbohydrate is then going to go into cellular respiration, and then with the presence of oxygen, is going to oxidize that carbohydrate back into carbon dioxide, and it's going to go back into forming energy. And that energy, the ATP, is then going to go back into reducing more coenzymes that will result in the production of a lot of ATP and the anabolic activities that we need to do, meaning we need to build our own molecules up and build up our lipids and our proteins and our biomolecules. Okay? And of course, as you can see, there is a cycle going on right here and right here where this ATP and these oxidized coenzymes and these reduced coenzymes are just being, they're pretty much just being used to, the ATP is being made to start a process, and it's also being made to anabolize compounds. And then the oxidized coenzymes are then there and present in order to be reduced to provide energy for each process. Okay? And like I said, the oxidized coenzymes here are going to go into the production of a reduced coenzyme or high energy to make more ATP. All right? So that's the last section of 2.1. And if you guys have any questions, make sure you let me know.